young people around the world want to see change. Join your co-hosts, William, Anastasia, and George, as they speak to young leaders from around the world on their stories, their struggles, and most importantly, their incredible impact. In season 2 of this podcast, be ready to get inspired. This is where action begins, and this is the Young Changemakers podcast.
Okay, hi Rachel, and welcome to the Young Changemakers podcast. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show, and I'm sure for the South African listeners, you don't really need an introduction. But for the broader audience, would you mind just sharing a bit more about yourself and how you stumbled into the work of the Kolisi Foundation?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, firstly, George. I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And there's two things that I absolutely love talking about, and it's RISE and it's the Kolisi Foundation and the work that we get to be doing. So for those of you who may not know me, my name is Rachel Kolisi. I have 4 amazing kids. I've got year-old, a 12-year-old who may or may not be going on 16, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. I also have an organization called RISE, which is for women and just helping women to live more purposeful lives through health and fitness. I'm also married to Rachel Kolisi, who was recently the World Cup winning captain in Japan. For rugby, if you don't watch rugby. And then so the Kolisi Foundation, so off of the back of the World Cup, we always knew that we wanted to do a lot of work in South Africa, and we didn't want Sia specifically didn't really want his only legacy to be on the rugby field and what he achieved there. He wanted it to be significant and a legacy that he left behind. And so the whole year last year, I actually knew we were going to win the World Cup, and I planned my whole year around it, to the point that I only booked my flight home from the World Cup with no flexible flights or anything, but after the final. And we already had a plan going into it, so we didn't want to waste any time coming home. And of course, to enjoy the celebrations and stuff is important, but we just wanted to get to work. So that's what we did as soon as we got to work. And we thought we were going to found the foundation. We thought it would be around July, August, so around this time this year. But of course, when COVID hit, we knew we wanted to help, and we had already created some significant relationships with brands and with people of influence, and we just wanted to leverage off of that and use that. And so the foundation was founded, and we didn't have a logo, we didn't have a website, we had nothing ready, but we wanted to help, which I think really speaks to the heart of the foundation and the work we do. So yeah, here we are a couple of months later, and we have been working, that is for sure.
I love how you were so confident that the Springboks were going to get the World Cup back in their hands. But I know as an Australian, I was definitely behind the box as well. I'm so thrilled for yourself and Sia and the nation at large for the win, because I know it means so much for South Africa. But going back to your foundation, I guess you didn't anticipate starting everything and all these new projects during a global pandemic. How has that challenge fared out? And if you wouldn't mind giving some more concrete examples of the work that you're doing exactly, Rachel.
Of course. So, I kind of mentioned that we started without a website. We started without a logo. We didn't have a vision, a mission, anything. We just knew we wanted to get to work. So I've been doing a number of community projects for a couple of years already. Sia, of course, has been giving back a lot into his community where he grew up as well. So we started off with the foundation with PPE with COVID. So we thought protection gear for the and we did a number of I can't even remember. I think it was like 5,000 liters of sanitizer, like 3,000 masks. I think we did a bunch of PPE at 3 different hospitals around South Africa. And then the private sector kind of said to us rather not to do too much PPE, because in South Africa, we have a lot of, I'm trying to find the right word, but a lot of, I don't know, I can't think of the word, but
Right.
basically the advantage of the fact if there's extra. So, which did happen. So there was a lot of extra PPE in a lot of hospitals, which was then stolen and resold.
Sure.
So they just advised early on to not go the PPE route and rather encourage people to stay home. And what needed to happen for that to happen was people to get fed. So we set a goal of feeding 1,000 families at the beginning of COVID. And we didn't want to commit to a family for 1 month because COVID was too long and too hard hit to commit, in my opinion, and in our opinion, is to only commit to a family for a month or to do like a one-stop shop drop. It's just not, someone's lost their job. It's got to be something a little bit longer, and you've got to think of how you're going to sustain that after. So we committed to 3 months to all the drops that we did, and we are now close to 100,000 families that we fed throughout. And our packs are the biggest packs, food packs that were given in South Africa. And that was purely because we had a great relationship with Pick and Pay and Boxer stores, and wanted to give as well. But it speaks to the fact that any person of influence already, even influencers, if you will, so like fashion and whatever they're into, they all have relationships with brands, and those brands all have capacity to be able to give back. In fact, they have to. So it's just kind of navigating that and making sure that you can be a part of that, foundation or no foundation.
Sure.
And now in Women's Month, so gender-based violence is out of control in South Africa. The 1 in every 3, these are just some stats, 1 in every 3 women in South Africa will be raped. And a woman in South Africa has a higher chance of being raped and abused than they do of learning to read. So during Women's Month, something that we really wanted to tackle was the issue around gender-based violence. And we recently had a call, so Sia became an ambassador for the UN, and we recently had a call with Charlize Theron, and it's also something that's very big on her heart, so we're looking at trying to find a way that we can work together on that. But at this stage, what we've done is we've created Power to You packs, which have a whistle in and a pepper spray, a small little pepper spray, and masks, and also a journal that we've created with emergency numbers and anything to equip her to get out of an emergency situation. So we've created those Power to You packs, and they've already gone out into communities. And I actually spoke to a lady recently who was a survivor of rape and abuse, and I asked her, I was like, would this help you? Would this have helped you in your situation? And she said, definitely. So there's a lot of almost after you've been raped, here's a care package. Sorry about what happened to you. So almost like care packs, but nothing for prevention, which is what we wanted to tackle. So we started these little prevention packs, and so far they've been absolutely incredible, and hoping that they are going to make a huge impact in communities. And we've only started, I think, with 1,000, but we're planning on doing many, many more.
Wow, that sounds incredible, Rachel. I think this transitions nicely into what the Young Changemakers organization is predominantly focused on, is youth empowerment. Now, I guess to help transition and change the narrative of South Africa, a lot of the work and focus you've also tried to aim at is on youth. Could you talk a bit more about that, and how yourself and Sia have, whether it's through sport or visiting schools, how have you specifically targeted youth in South Africa?
Yeah, and it's a very good point. And actually, just to touch on that is, you know, everyone talks about a foundation having to have a having to have a specific thing that they target, something that they want to achieve, a goal. And it's almost been so great being able to work on the ground and work in the communities during this time, because we've kind of been able to establish the work that we really want to do. And one of that is definitely among the youth, you know, talking into gender-based violence again. Boys have to be taught how to respect a woman, how to love a woman, how to treat a woman. So a lot of that has had to start at a youth age as well. So we're also looking at partnering with, so with our foundation, we're not necessarily trying to reinvent a wheel in anything. Trying to partner, there's a lot of small organizations in this country that are doing really incredible work that actually just need a light shone on the work that they've already been doing. And they just don't have the resource, they just don't have the platform. So that's where we kind of coming in now, and we want to amplify the work that you're doing already. So yeah, one of the organizations has this boys group, like this men's group that walks in the communities and walks women from like their home to the taxi, and just transports them to make sure that they're safe. And yeah, wow. Just going into development, one of the things that's, so definitely the gender-based violence, a lot of boys and attackers that grow up to be attackers are products of what happened in their environment. So we're also attacked, we're also abused, and you know, men being raped, that's something, boys being raped, that's something that's not even like touched on, which is a massive issue as well. And just kind of giving them a voice, but going more into like the sporting development side of things. So it's kind of great because we have such a good insight into what's going on into the communities, because Sia lived it. That was his reality. So we almost trying to right the things that were wrong in his life for youth in South Africa. So what were the issues? He didn't get food. He didn't have clothing. He didn't have an opportunity to go to a Model C school. And just safety, like he wasn't safe. So these are all issues that we trying to, you know, slowly tackle. Obviously COVID has taken us a little bit sideways on that, but yeah, the more we work there, the more we realize the need for it. But he's also just completed he did a collaboration with Farm Brand, who create great leather products with a shoe. And the proceeds that they collected from that shoe, then they built a field in Imakwe, and it's an incredible field. And a field is more than just like kids training on a rugby field with grass. Like there's so much more opportunities for a community to have a field. You know, if you think about when we went to school, our schools would almost use those fields for market days or kind of fundraisers for the schools. And that's kind of the thought process behind creating fields, as well as creating an income stream for the communities.
Hi there. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far. We just wanted to let you know that we're on social media at WeAreGCM. And don't hesitate to follow us. And if you'd like to support us further, we also have a Patreon page. Type in Global Changemakers and decide which tier is best for you. And now, on with the rest of the episode. No, I think you've identified the root causes, as you said, like sort of seeing how Sia, you know, going through putting yourself in his shoes and using his story and walking that with him, and then sort of going back to the communities that need his help. It's really, I think it's a good model to work off. Rachel, I want to throw it back onto you. Back in February of 2019, you yourself got your hands dirty, and you went for a bit of a bike ride. Could you tell us more? And I think it was from Kimberley, am I right, all the way down to Cape Town. Now I've travelled from Kimberley actually across to East London and down to Pier and across to Cape Town. It's one hell of a journey, I can tell you that. Can you tell us more
You know,
about that project and the Extreme Ride for Hunger?
yeah. So I feel like I was forced into that actually. So the organizer, his name is Bevan, and Bevan just contacted me on social media, and he was like, "Hey, I would love for you to join this ride." And at the time, I was really fit. I don't ride bikes. I'm not a, you get people and you get bike people, and I'm just not a bike person.
Oh, I'm on the same page. I absolutely hate riding, right?
Oh my God. So yeah, just not a bike person. And Bevan, I'm telling you, that man can sell a spoon to a chef. Like, he is just, I mean, I don't know. So anyway, how he sold it to me was because he knew my heart, and he knew my heart for the community. And he just said, it's so important for people to know about the hunger issue in South Africa. This is 2 years before COVID. And he's like, we stop off in all of the rural communities where literally they don't even have a shop in those communities. And you've never seen desperation like that before. And at the time, I had a baby. I don't think she was 1 yet. And I was so just involved in what Sia was doing, and I didn't have anything. Rise wasn't a thing yet, and I didn't have anything for me. So I was like, you know what? Like, I've had 2 babies. I've been doing this mom thing for years. Like, I just want something for myself. So I was like, I'm gonna go on a 6-day trip, and I'm gonna go do this flip and ride. So my training, I did training at a sports science center on a watt bike. But other than, I didn't.
Brutal. I hate those.
Yeah, terrible. And I had one of the best trainers in South Africa giving me programs and stuff, which was such a blessing. I didn't own a bike, so Trek sponsored a bike for me just for that trip. And they sent the bike like 10 days before I was supposed to leave. And I remember I rode around the Rondebosch Common, which is probably riding around there is about 5Ks.
Yep.
I rode around it 4 times, so I did about 10 Ks, and then I got a puncture. So I rode the shoots, and that was it. That was all the training I did. Otherwise, I did one ride just up my street because there was some newspaper that wanted to do an article, and I fell actually. I left my stud in the pedal, and and I leaned the way that my foot was. Stuck, and so it was just a bit of a disaster. And that was the only article I did. And then, of course, we did the ride. So I had no idea what I was getting myself into. We wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we ride between 180 to 200 Ks a day. In total, it's 1,000 kilometers from Kimberley to Cape Town. And it was horrific, to say the least. I rode with a bunch of professional riders, and I was the most novice rider there. So half the ride, I honestly had them pushing my back. So just pushing me forward and teaching me about a slip. I had no idea what a slip was. And I just learned so much on that ride. But what really kept me going was the stop. So at the end of every day, we would stop off in the rural communities, and man, you think people are struggling in South Africa until you really like get stuck into those places that are like destitute.
More rural communities, yeah.
Oh, absolutely nothing going on there. And it was a big eye opener. So we dropped off food parcels along the way. We had a bunch of trucks with us, and we dropped off food parcels. But it's, I hated majority of the actual riding, but the rest of it, the people, the just eye-opening experience of it was something that I could never get again. And I would do it every single year, obviously with a little bit more training, but I happily do it again and again and again, and encourage so many people to do it as well. In fact, we finished off in Khayelitsha, and I hadn't been in Khayelitsha. I had been almost hijacked there, and and that was the previous time that I'd been there. And the next time was on a bike, and you feel a lot more exposed on a bike than you do in a car. But it was incredible, and I would do it all again for sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. I don't think I'd be saying the same thing. I know but the mentality that you had going into that, maybe you wouldn't have been so confident and whatnot. But yeah, it must have been really rewarding, Rachel. And like you said, actually at the end of each day to be doing some meaningful work and handing out the food parcels. Yeah, that's incredible. And I mean, during a pandemic, a lot of these communities are very vulnerable as is, and that's just exacerbated by, so many different things. They're not able to work. If they are able to work, they're not able to sort of get public transport during the lockdown. So yeah, just food security and alleviating hunger is massive. So Rachel, our last question, I think, what's in store for the Kolisi Foundation moving forward? Because you've already achieved so much in, what is it, like 7 or 8 months, less than.
It's not even, so it was from March to, where are we now, August, so that's like four months.
Yeah.
And yeah, we've managed to do a lot of work, but there's a lot of work to do. So I did an interview recently where someone said, wow, you must just go to bed every night with such satisfaction for the amazing work you're doing. And I'm just like, absolutely not. Every single time I leave the community, I go to bed with my heart so heavy, and just realizing like how much more work there is to do here. Oh, and you know what, like, until there's equality in this country, on all spectrums, we've got a long way to go, and we definitely do. So the fact that there's still people walking around like hungry and going to bed hungry, that's a problem. Like that's inhumane, that's torture, and people are quick to judge about how dangerous South Africa is, and how bad it is, and look how they loot trucks and burn schools and do all of these things. But I always think, if we just take a minute and put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. So let's say somebody, for instance, who works in the hospitality or tourism industry, they're not going to be open for a long time, right? And they were getting a steady income, and then all of a sudden the place had to close down, and now there's nothing. And you have 5 kids at home, not necessarily your children, but family or friends of the community that you support. And now you're expected to still feed those 5 mouths without an income and still try to school fees, etc., etc. Honestly, if I was coming home to my kids and they were starving every day, I would also loot a truck, and I would also create some attention around my desperate needs. So as quick as we can be, in our nice houses and our warm beds and our, ordering out food, as quick as we are to judge, we must just remember that for somebody else, it's an absolute desperate situation. And just to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, I think that's important.
No, that's incredible, because I think perspective is a huge virtue to carry during these times. And the work that the Kolisi Foundation is doing is definitely shining light on different areas. And I think yourself and Sia are certainly giving a voice and an opportunity for, even people outside of South Africa to start to see just how important a united and sort of common story shared amongst others in South Africa is for it moving forward. I mean, I spent 2 years in South Africa, and it was honestly one of the best experiences of my life, and I've so much love.
The best 2 years of your life. Tell us the truth.
It was hell of fun. Yeah, I loved it and met so many great people, and have kept in touch with them. And I know I'll be coming back. And I'd love to get involved, if possible, with your work and get my hands dirty.
Yeah.
So, thanks very much, Rachel, for sharing your time and chatting with us on the Young Changemakers podcast today.
George, it's such a pleasure. And yeah, so grateful for the opportunity. But I just want to finish off by saying the intention of like Sia and I getting involved now as well is to make it look like, especially for younger people, it's cool to be kind. It's cool to do good things for other people. You know, we're beyond this point on social media of like having these perfect everything and sponsored everything. Like people want to see other people helping. People want to know that brands are helping now. And I just think that it's super important, you know, if you find yourself in a place of influence or not, if you're just a person, like find a need and do something about it. It doesn't have to be something grand or big or great, but honestly, just feeding someone, like taking out a sandwich for someone, that's a massive, it's not much for you to do, but for somebody receiving it, it's huge. So don't underestimate the value of what it is to help somebody else. And yeah, it's cool to be kind.
I couldn't echo that enough. Yeah, thanks very much, Rachel. And this is such a great conversation. I really look forward to sharing it with our network.
Yeah, awesome, George. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Remember that you can help us have a greater impact by sharing this and encouraging everybody on your social media to take a listen. If you want to reach out, remember that the contact of the co-host is down below in the show notes, or feel free to do it on social media at WeAreGCM. We will be very happy to talk to you and answer any of your questions. Also, remember to follow us and to subscribe to this podcast. See you in the next episode. Take care.